You're listening to Boobies and Newbies. Find and follow Boobies and Newbies at Boobies Podcast across platforms and on boobiesandnewbies.com. And don't forget at Real Kelly Ray on TikTok, because TikTok thinks I'm making porn if I use boobies in the handle. Thanks, TikTok! Welcome to Boobies and Newbies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. The episode you're about to listen to, Redeeming the Unlikable Heroine, was recorded live in February 2023 on YouTube as part of our Tit Talk series. Now, if you're new to Boobies and Newbies, Tit Talk is a monthly panel discussion between the folks who write romance and the readers who love them. Join me every month as I moderate a discussion with a new topic each time amongst readers, bloggers, podcasters, authors, and more, all in the name of romance. Anybody who's listened to Boobies and Newbies long enough knows that I am an unlikable heroine stan. To be honest, I don't even like calling them unlikable heroines. Because what makes them unlikable? Is it their relationship status? Is it their career choices? Is it their age? Perhaps it's the idea of them wanting to travel across the country with their girlfriends rather than settle down and have a baby. During this panel, we explore why so-called unlikable heroines get so much hate, especially when it comes from female readers. As always, you can revisit our past Tit Talk episodes on the Boobies and Newbies YouTube channel if you prefer the visual format. The best way to support the podcast is to follow us across our socials at Boobies Podcast. And of course, if you've got a few extra bucks to spare and you want to go the extra mile towards supporting your favorite podcast, you might consider subscribing to the Boobies and Newbies Patreon. I will, of course, leave links for all of the above in today's show notes, but for now, please sit back and enjoy the show. Welcome, everybody who's joining us both on YouTube Live for this discussion, as well as anybody who's tuning in to the podcast recording that will be later released of this live panel. This is Tit Talk. It is a monthly discussion about topics in and around the world of romance with romance writers, authors, bloggers, etc. Everyone who loves the genre and helps to make it what it is. I'm so thankful for everybody that's here today on this panel. I will let them introduce themselves in a minute. I will say we do also have a fifth panelist who may or may not be back simply because we're having technical difficulties. So hopefully we will get Tavi back in. And if not, maybe she'll join the live chat because obviously I still want to hear her opinions on the subject today. And that subject is redeeming the unlikable, sense the air quotes, the unlikable heroine, which is something near and dear to my heart. I think it's something we're having a lot more conversations about when it comes to romance novels. So it seemed like the perfect time to talk about it. And I think I've got a great panel here that's has their own opinions about it, but both reading and writing it. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. I guess first I'll start by saying my name is Kelly and I host the Boobies and Newbies podcast. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, etc. at Boobies Podcast. And I also write books now. So that's a thing. And we'll see what happens there. I have a really bad head cold. So that's probably why I'm not in the full mind space right now. I'm going to pass it over to Ariana.
Hi, I'm Ariana. Ariana reads books on Instagram, Goodreads, Twitter, TikTok, all of the above. I'm a romance reviewer who often likes to do makeup looks to go with book covers. And I have Kelly's book right there.
Oh,
cute.
You do better promo than I do, so thank you.
Yeah, I should have put some books. I've got nothing.
They're all on the opposite wall, too. Like, I just realized when I set up my new office in my new place, I'm like, you're not seeing anything good. Like, you get to see my bed and my dresser, and that's it. Oh, boy. All right. Cat, over to you.
Hi, my name is Cat Wynn. I am a romance author. I write spicy rom-coms. We have another person. I'll keep going. I write unlikable heroines. I am also an unlikable woman, and I treasure that about myself. And I'm a host of a podcast too, Tall, Dark, and Fictional. It's a podcast about romance fiction by romance authors. And I apologize for the sunglasses. I am pre-migraine. Seeing how we do. So very happy to be on this panel, though. Very excited.
Awesome. Suzanne, how about you introduce yourself?
Yes, I am. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I am a romance author. I write under my real name, Suzanne Baltsar. I also have a pen name, Sophie Andrews, on the spectrum of spice, both with unlikable heroines. I'm really happy to be here because I know for a fact I am unlikable. I've been told before. So
and you know what I loved, especially because I know when I was sharing the information about today's subject, that I think it was Suzanne that I saw that you had shared it and said, like, I knew that I was a quote unquote unlikable woman, like at this point in my life. And I thought that was so interesting. And I kind of wanted to explore that and just kind of kick off the chat by asking each of you, what is one of the qualities that we typically associate with an unlikable woman? And I say that specifically, like both women in real life, as well as the heroines that we do read in our romance novels. And feel free for anybody to jump in and kick us off.
I'll say, I think it's vulnerability in a way that's not soft. When vulnerability comes out in messy ways or angry ways or ways that just show women as a little bit gross, I think people hate that. They hate to see the grossness that lies within us. And not to say being unlikable even means there is grossness, but grossness is insofar as like women are expected to be like beautiful prizes for people and make everybody happy. So I think, and I think that's fraudulent. I don't think we should ever really be looking at people in that manner. So that's my thought on it.
I'll say, well, I was told when I was 18, my high school boyfriend broke up with me because I was loud and obnoxious. So that's my, we can't be too loud. We can't have too much attention. We can't tell too many jokes. We can't tell the truth on what we're thinking because then we're loud and obnoxious.
Argue at the dinner party. That's a Cat Wynn special. Argue at the dinner party with the jerk. Yeah, always, every time.
Take out your soapbox. They hate that.
Oh yeah.
I
Have an
found
opinion.
that the traits that we usually find unlikable in our heroines are the same traits that we really love in our heroes, and I think that's really interesting.
Great point.
I agree.
Especially like confidence in women. Like women in both romance and real life are not allowed to be confident and proud and ambitious and know what they have going for themselves, because then they're a bitch or they're cold or they're cocky. And I feel like that's one of the main ones I see a lot.
Can I say something about that? Because that's such a good point. And not only like confidence and cockiness, but like irritation and annoyance. Like think about Michael Scott. He is the most unlikable hero of all time, and people go apeshit for that man. They fucking love him. They would like throw themselves like off a bridge for him. Or BoJack Horseman, another one. Just like so unlikable. We root for him to the end. You switch those characters around, you get like a Carrie Bradshaw or something, and suddenly everybody's up in arms. Like, what a terrible woman. We hate her so much.
I do think that is the root for what we've labeled as unlikable is qualities that we typically associate as being masculine, whatever the fuck that means, or something that we associate with men, applying those to women and female characters, I think is kind of where that idea of like a woman being unlikable comes from. Because I think you're exactly right, Ariana, that it's a lot of the same qualities and actions that we see male characters take in romance novels. And honestly, it goes beyond that into our everyday lives that we will stand for, and not only stand for them, but root for their redemption and root for them to be better and do better, that we don't apply the same way of thinking towards our female characters.
And write like sexy fanfic about them.
Yeah. And especially in romance novels, I feel like men are allowed to have this whole journey, this like self-realization. They get to become who they're meant to be. And women are supposed to be perfect from page one. Like immediately you have to follow these moral guidelines. And that's what makes you good.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I wanted to see sort of what some people were how people envisioned like the unlikable heroine and their opinions on it online. So I did a little bit of research down one of my favorite, rabbit holes to fall down, Reddit, obviously. And so I did in fact find a post that somebody had shared about a year ago, kind of asking, can someone please explain the unlikable heroines to me? And what I found interesting was just the question itself wasn't necessarily what I would consider like best faith, because it wasn't, can you explain to me what they are? It was, can you explain to me why people like them? Like, I don't understand what it is that people like about them. And from this original post, the original poster said, what I'm noticing is that there seems to be a good number of readers who actively want an unlikable heroine. What's the appeal? Do you want her to be redeemed, or do you want her to be an insufferable monster all the way through the book? And I think there's several quotes that I do want to pull from people's replies, which I think were really great. And I will also, when I release the podcast episode, I will post the original thread within the show notes so people can refer back to it. But I think it's interesting, Ariana, that you were talking about the character like as they're already formed and that there's no like room for growth. And I liked what this one person said in response, which was, I'm not a fan of cookie cutter agreeable characters in general. I like difficult and bitchy heroines who make choices I don't necessarily like because they allow for more character arcs and growth. And this was the part that really stood out to me. I think this is my problem with romance in general. Some of the heroines, most of the heroines, start out fully formed, while the heroes are the ones who have an internal journey that the heroines help them with. And I found that really interesting because I do find that in a lot of the romance books that I read, that it's even something that I've thought about when I was writing my book, that I would have this worry of, oh my God, is there enough for the male character? Is he doing enough? Is he going through enough? Is he thinking about things enough? And I feel like I maybe even didn't pay as much attention to my female character because I was trying to overcompensate by thinking about the male lens, which is honestly probably just internalized misogyny at work. But I do think that tends to be something that we see a lot. And Tavi, it looks like we have you here.
Hello.
I think so. I don't wanna jinx it, but I think
did it. Well,
You look great.
Yeah, you look very clear.
I've been complimenting your hair like the entire time.
I could hear you all. So I was like, well, this is nice. This is a nice little boost to my ego.
I love it. Well, while we have you, and hopefully we will keep you, but do you want to introduce yourself and also feel free to add into the conversation about what makes an unlikable heroine?
Okay, well, I'm Tavi. I read a lot of romance. I'm now writing it. I used to only write YA post-apocalyptic dystopians. And like a year and a half ago, I've started to dip my toe, and that was my finger, but you get the drift. I started to dip my toe into that pond, and I don't know who said it because it was right before my camera went down again on my computer. Love that for me. But someone said that a lot of times the unlikable traits are things that we don't like. The unlikable traits are things that we don't like about ourselves. And I was like, oh, hard relate. Thanks so much for smack, on this lovely Sunday afternoon, giving me, a little bit of medicine. Thanks for that.
I think that's true. I mean, we can just throw out some words too that I feel like we associate, like bossy, honestly, independent, driven,
non-committal,
not loud,
strong,
absolutely,
yeah,
funny,
messy.
It's so fun. Messy.
Yeah. Interested in sex at all, like actively desiring to have sex, I feel like is a big one too.
Or has more sex or has had more sex than the hero.
Oh my God, yes.
Kind of like unwilling to follow certain social norms about what women should be doing at certain ages. I've always noticed that age really comes into play. In fact, I got like dinged for that so many times with my novel partner track.
I want to hear you talk about that, Cat, and especially to Cat and Suzanne, if there's been anything related to this that has popped up in the books that you've written, in any reviews you might have received, or just the way that your characters have been perceived.
Well, I'll say that I don't read reviews, and when people
Good
tag
for you.
here's why. When people tag me in them, and they're generally pretty nice when people tag you, but every once in a while people kind of they go off the rocker a little bit. I'm always a little bit confused when you would tag an author in a bad review. Please don't do that. But I um noticed like one person tagged me in like an okay review, and what she said was that she thought my character was immature, which was funny to me because she's a 39-year-old woman who is killing it at work, who owns her own house, who has a best friend. They live together. They have a dog together. She's, she picks up her dry cleaning on time. Like, to me, that's someone who's very mature. I don't know. You have friends, you have relationships. But I realized it was because she wasn't married. She didn't want kids. And she was still kind of like having a good time. Like, she would go out and like, she would hang, like, meet a man, and they didn't even hook up. They became friends, but she like crashed at his couch overnight. And people found that like very unlikable. And I thought it was interesting because I'm like, well, she's not following this script that people assign to women, that once you hit 39, it's over. No more fun. You're not, whatever you're doing. And look, it is over for me in lots of ways. So I'm like boring now and I sleep all the time, right? Like, I don't do those things anymore. But I also don't believe in following the script just because people think that makes you quote unquote mature or good or the right kind of woman. And so I don't read reviews because I want to write in an honest way, and I don't fit the molds of every woman. No woman does, no woman should. And so I don't want to be chasing after people's good opinion of me or of my writing. I just want to write something that feels true and authentic and that has integrity. And will people always like that? No, they have proven that they do not. And that's,
Well,
you know what, you have to make your peace with it.
If it's true to you, though, it will no doubt be true to somebody else, too. Like, I mean, that's
Sure,
kind
always.
of what my experience has been. And Suzanne, I will come back to, I promise. I just wanted to add in this like quandary that I always have where I know, and it's on my mind because I freaking love The Daily Show. And I love that they've been having all these guest hosts who have been hosting it. We've seen Sarah Silverman. We've seen Chelsea Handler. And Chelsea Handler, God, I love her for just being Chelsea Handler and, doing the things she loves and the way she lives her life. And it's just wild to me that there's been so much talk about that lately from varying news outlets, but just that.
Just one.
Just one. I mean, let's
Just
be
the
honest.
one.
I don't know if I can actually call them news. I think they like admitted that it's not. But
more news than the other news.
Yeah. The other thing, though, that just, as somebody who's avidly on TikTok, and I know it's the same for several of you, one thing that I see consistently is this idea that like your life ends after the age of 40. I don't know why it's always the age of 40, but I swear in every video that every person is critiquing specifically like people who are choosing to be childless, who are choosing, not to date, or who are choosing to just casually date and they're not necessarily in a committed relationship. It's always the age of 40 that's like, oh, when you get to 40 and you got your cats and you live alone. And I just want to know what people think changes the second you turn 40. Like since when is that like an old age to like?
Growing up, I thought it was 30. Go figure.
Same.
And
totally.
30 was actually my scary age.
Yes.
And that was the age where I thought that I had to have it all together.
Have it all?
I would be married. I'd have kids. Delusional, but I thought I would be on the Upper West Side. I'm in Harlem, which is great. I love my neighborhood, but I could not tell me I wouldn't be in a pre-war building on the Upper West Side that skipped the 13th floor because of superstition.
Overlooking the park, obviously.
Yep. And I have wraparound windows where I could see Central Park from one room, but then the Hudson River in another. And I, for the longest, from reading romance novels, the protagonist was almost never over 30. So that solidified, and I'm happy that that's changing, but it wasn't even, like, now I'm like, 40 is great, but like, or I'm assuming it's going to be great, but that's only because I stopped thinking that 30 was like the end of my life.
Yeah. Anne says 40 is the new 30. Yeah, honestly, I mean, in reality, it's not. Like, we know that, like, I mean, age is just a number. Like, it really has no bearing. But it's just wild to me that is always the rhetoric these days is 40. But you're right. I remember 30 being the year. And you know what? For the longest time when reading romance, if you did have a character who was in their 30s, typically they were 30, and there was something about the story that tied into, oh man, I wish by the time I was 30 I would have accomplished this. I've reached this age and I'm failing. I haven't met all of society's standards for where I should be at the age of 30. And, you know, like you said, we're moving away from that, thankfully. However, I think that is still very much a thing in the books that we read.
Yes.
I just finished my master's in creative writing, and my
Congratulations!
thesis. Thank you.
Congrats.
Woo!
And my thesis is about two sisters. They're 68 and 70, and it's a buddy comedy with romance, and they. But my mentor in the program was saying, like, almost like, I wanted to say, like, this is your internalized misogyny coming out right now. Because she was saying the one sister has an affair with a younger man, and she was saying, well, you either have to up his age or lower her age. And she said, like, she said something that like sticks with me every day. Every day I think of this. I wake up and I think of this. She said, I don't remember if it was 40 or 50. She said, but we disappear and no one sees us anymore. And it's like people look right through us. And I was like, so
Wow.
In my book, like, these sisters are having so much fun, and it was almost like she was like, this is great because we exist, like, we are doing these things, but other people don't even care or know that we're doing these things. And I was like, oh my God, that's so terrible.
No, and it is, but that's such an important conversation to have, though, because I feel like too often, and we see this in several ways in romance, but too often we have people saying, well, it's just fiction. It's not, you know, you can excuse X, Y, and Z because it's just fiction. It's not real. And I don't know what needs to happen for people to understand that, like, art imitates life, imitates art, imitates life. Like, it is an ongoing cycle. We constantly see the themes and the messaging that are happening in our real lives in fiction, maybe presented in a different world or a different time period or setting. However, it's still very much there. And the same can be said where we have people who read and watch and consume whatever media they're consuming, and that does affect the way that they treat people and the way that they see things in their everyday lives. So that's a great example. And I think that kind of is why we've even coined the term unlikable heroine, is because it's coming from a place of, we're seeing a mold being broken that's been created for women, not by women, for women for centuries. And to see characters breaking from that mold in our books, in our movies, you know, and also women doing so in real life, is shaking people up and honestly scaring them. I think that's part of it more than anything.
Can I say something that I think is very interesting? Suzanne, when you said, was it your mentor who read your story? Is that who you got that feedback from?
Mm-hmm.
I find it really interesting that was a comment she made, which I've heard many, many people say, like, oh, once you hit 45, like, no one sees you, whatever.
Yeah.
But that you were actually making those women seen by writing about them. But her comment was, oh, nobody sees women after this age. But it's like, but we see them. You saw them. Like, whoever reads your stuff sees them. So it's like, I don't know. It kind of feels a little like counterproductive to
well,
like,
and I
make
think,
the
like,
point.
That's like the catch-22 in publishing, right? Like,
right.
We know there's an audience for these books. We know we want these books. And yet she was just trying to help me with marketability. Yeah. And, like, I wanted one of the characters to, in her backstory, to have had an abortion. And she said, no.
Oh, that's so funny. I write that in stuff that's so funny.
Yeah, like, I've had it in my books, but because this book is aiming towards, you know, the biggest reading population is women over 40 or 50 or whatever it is, like that book club. And she's like, well, if you want these women to read your books, like, this is the Roe generation. So it's going to be split in half. And I was like,
also,
she's unlikable.
If we disappear at 50, then can we walk outside at night alone?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Someone answer that for me. Yeah.
Is that possible? I wanted to read a quick thing that This was an article published on Frolic, and I don't have a date and I don't have an author. So really, Frolic, you need to update your website. But this was an article that was called An Ode to the Unlikable Heroine. And the author said, this is about the generalized popular opinion that a heroine with hero qualities isn't a relatable female. She doesn't exemplify the role we expect her to play and is therefore someone that, instead of encouraging her growth, we lose interest in her development. And that's just something I think, especially as readers, is worth unpacking. I know I find myself asking this all the time if I'm not necessarily enjoying a particular character in a book, is sort of asking myself, like, why? Like, and I'm just sort of wondering, what's that experience been like for all of you? Because all writers are readers as well, of just reading the quote unquote unlikable heroine and having to like have that conversation with yourself.
Who just
Feel
like,
free.
Ariana, you like
Okay, so we've said internalized misogyny a lot, which I feel like is the root of all of this. And I am a women's studies minor, so that's like one of my things. And I feel like these traits that we see, that we find ourselves being like, I could never, like, I don't like that about her, are things that we've been taught since we were little, that we hate about women. Like, that's something that we can't do. It's undesirable. It makes us look undesirable to other people. And I feel like that is the root of all of it, is what we were taught to see as unlikable. And that's now what we're projecting onto these characters as unlikable. I feel like that has a lot to do with it.
Not to interrupt, but undesirable to who?
Exactly.
yeah.
Usually to men, because that is the lens that we're all judging ourselves through, or looking at ourselves, or comparing ourselves to. And I feel like that once we've stopped catering to that, there's been so much room for growth and expression and creativity that we never had before.
Desirability politics. That's where it is, right there. Who we should be, who we exist for, like who we get up in the morning for, and the fact that we are just here to be viewed as something. And it of course seeps into our media and into our art and everything that we do. I want to say one person that I always think of when I think of like an unlikable heroine, that like you can tell with the time has like turned, like people have turned their opinion on her, which is Miranda Hobbs on Sex and the City. Like I feel like everyone loves Miranda Hobbs now. Everyone's like, yes, she's our favorite. Like we don't like any of the rest of
I will say I loved Miranda, but I don't love Miranda in this awful reboot of
I'm
Sex
not
and
watching
the
that.
City.
I can't.
I don't like what they did to her. So I am not happy with that. But I'm with you. Like, that was always a conversation had amongst friends, is like, who's the who in Sex and the City? Like, who's the Miranda?
And no
Who's
one ever wanted.
And
to
no
No
one
one was
wanted
ever-
to be the
Yeah.
Miranda.
I'm still a Carrie, and everyone hates Carrie. So like I get it, but I know that this is true about me. She's unlikable in what the kind of a wrong way. Also, like she's selfish, she's inconsiderate, she spends her money the wrong way. She doesn't, she's always she is an annoying character too, I would say, just genuinely.
Yeah, I think you could make a case, honestly,
For all of them.
for every single character on Sex
Yeah.
and the City. There's a thesis for you, is like the unlikable heroines of Sex and the City, because I think everybody gravitates towards one or more of them, saying like, oh, I love this about them. I love this about them. However, by society's standards, I think all of them could fit into what we think of the category of being for unlikable women, especially because they're all over the age of like 35. So that's enough for them to be unlikable,
Mhm.
apparently.
Tavi, can I ask you a question? You said you wrote YA dystopia, is that right?
What
Now-
apocalyptic dystopia?
Apocalyptic, okay. So it's mostly female characters who are the leads of those. Now, do you get the same feedback about that as far as like who's likable and who's not?
Well, in the very few people who I've allowed to read it.
Oh, I see.
But this is important because I gave it to I've given it to white readers and I've given it to Black readers. And my white readers always almost hate River, the main character. And she's Black. She's too assertive. She should be kinder. She seems loud, and I'm like, the world has fallen apart, you know? I feel like
There are more
you need
important matters.
someone-
Need a little grace.
So she should be a little bit more polite.
And like, I feel like when I look back at when I first wrote that book 10 years ago, because this year will be 10 years, I feel like I was trying to give her all the strength my 22, 23-year-old self didn't have. And so then to have people tell me that she was too loud and I think that, and wow, this is the first time I'm ever saying this out loud. I think that told me, well, then I need to continue to be quiet. I shouldn't speak my mind because this fictional person is doing it. And now I can, I can look back and say, wow, it was only the white readers who said that. But I think that I was like, well, if they really hate this fictional Black woman, this teenage fictional Black woman for being assertive and opinionated and have a strong opinion about what we should do, they would hate me in real life if I started to do that myself. And I'm grateful that I'm like trying to unlearn that. But it's been a lot of years of being like, oh, be quiet. And I've noticed that too, even just in romance books, in reviewer spaces, people critique the Black women and the Latina women very different than how they critique white women.
I'm so glad you brought that up too, because that's something I still to this day. I did an interview with Quanah Jackson.
I love her.
I love her too. And it's one of my favorite interviews that I've done because I don't know, there was just something about it when we were talking about her release, Keanu Reeves, How to Marry Keanu Reeves.
Oh,
in,
yes.
I think it's 60 days, 90 days.
90 days.
It's right here. 90 days, right?
I think it's 90, right?
However many
I think
days.
it's 90.
Yeah. The goal is to marry Keanu Reeves, period. But I found it really interesting that while we were talking, we did, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but she brought it up that, it hadn't necessarily received sort of like the positive feedback that like I think every writer is hoping for. And we talked about the fact that we were both just sort of like surprised by the things that people were pointing to as being negative critiques in this book. And a lot of it had to do with, one, her main character being a certain age. I think she's 40 or nearing 40, like in the book.
Okay, Keanu Reeves is like 60, so come on, guys. Like, come on.
Two, the idea of this woman of a certain age, because apparently 40 is when we all die, going on a road trip with a friend, just period. Just the idea of them going on a trip at all. Like that was problem. And three, that they're going on this trip for her to, pursue Keanu Reeves, which if you read the book, that's not even really what it's about. It's about grappling with grief. And so, but one of the things we did talk about was, is this the same critique that would be applied to a white female character? Or is this feeding into like this stereotype that people are creating about characters of color? And, neither of us have like a direct answer, but it is something that I have noticed in reading reviews of romance novels, depending on the races of the characters. So not cool.
Well, that also plays into desirability politics because race is part of desirability politics. And that is how people will judge the measure of your book, which whether fair or not fair, usually not fair, of course.
Body size as well.
Yeah, body
sexuality
size.
as well.
Right.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Direct ties to white supremacy. That's all that happens right there. Funny how that you can't get away from it, even when putting your heart into a book, and you will still be measured by those standards.
From this same article from Frolic, leading into the conclusion, the author writes, why do we feel this way? Why do we develop this collective dislike for a woman written in a very realistic light of modern trends in female empowerment? Maybe we don't like her because she exemplifies the things we as women secretly yearn for, but society still tells us we shouldn't want. Maybe our dislike is a reflection of patriarchal programming. Yes, I'm nodding. Not to take up space and noise. not to take up more space and noise than strictly necessary. There you go. That's what you're talking about, Tavi. And maybe we care more about watching a man's transition into an ideal form more than a woman's, because it provides us hope that misogyny can and will be changed.
But is
Ooh,
our goal for
interesting.
the unlikable character to become likable? Like, is that even the goal?
Excellent
Right?
question.
Yeah. It certainly isn't when I write.
Yeah, it shouldn't be the goal.
Right.
Well, and it kind
Right?
of feeds into my question, which is, if the characteristics that we've all already presented are what we use to define an unlikable heroine, what are the ones we use to define the likable ones?
Like
Nice.
personally, or
So nice.
yep, just so nice and
So nice.
and quiet and domestic.
And virginal. They love a virginal.
Yeah.
oh, we love a virgin.
She's quirky and like a little clumsy, but in a
She's
cute
not
way.
like
She's
other
a
girls.
Chloe Deschanel
Not like
girl.
other girls.
She's not
New
like
girl.
other girls.
She's our manic pixie dream girl.
She's pretty, but she doesn't know it. That's
Right.
my
Oh my
favorite.
It's funny to me because if I was to ask somebody like, what do you like about me? And someone said, you're nice, I would, one, take that as an insult. And I would, two, know that it's not true, that would not be like a good quality about me, because niceness is like a superficial fake thing. Niceness allows misogyny, racism, all these things. So, you know, the unlikable female or any kind of character, why would they be nice? I guess, like, for
Mhm.
what reason? To whose benefit would they be nice?
I'm from South Carolina, and we have a saying.
Hey, I'm
that
here.
People... Oh, hi.
I'm in Charleston.
I'm from like around Columbia.
Okay.
We have a saying that people in the South are kind and not nice. And that means that they will give you the shirt off their back. They'll help you out if you ever need it. But it's not like fake. It's not showcasing just for the sake of like how other people may be. And I feel like
I
that's
think they have
a
that
big
chart for the country, for the United States, where they kind of outline where people are nice versus kind.
In New York is the
Yeah.
opposite.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think the other one is like rude versus mean, or, you know, where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, you can be kind, but like present it in a rude way.
Mhm.
Right.
Which actually I do feel like that's probably what I would assign to most unlikable heroines, is that they are very loving and very nurturing to the people that matter to them, to the ones
That's
who
where
are very
I was
important in
going
their
with that,
lives.
yeah.
But yeah, anyway, continue. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ariana.
Oh no, you're absolutely there. They're the kindest women, but they're not conventionally nice. And so that's what makes them unlikable. But at their core, like their character, they're so kind and they're willing to do anything for the people that they love. And that's what I love about them.
It is interesting to me, the reasons why we, one, consider heroines to be unlikable, and two, how it always still seems to tie into men, that it always seems to tie into male characters, and that the reason they're unlikable is because of how they treat the male characters or how they don't respond to male characters, and that it's not their responsibility to help the male characters foster this growth that honestly they should be having. That's something that I've noticed a lot in romance novels in the last couple of years that I have appreciated, has been, coffee, has been this understanding that while these characters are on a growth together, they're on like a character arc together, there also needs to be like an individual arc as well. Like, we can see them grow as a couple, but I also want to see them grow as individuals, and they do not necessarily have to each be a part of that, like at least completely part of that individual growth, which I think we accept when men do that, but not when women do that. Like, if she's growing, he needs to be a part of her growth journey to help bring her back down to the like mold that we've created, like for women and female characters.
As a writer, that can be very interesting to dissect, because I think of my books as, you know, writing parts, and I write male female romance. So it, you know, I always am like, and I also write single point of view, because I care much less about what the man is doing in the story, you know what I mean? Like, I just do. Like, I'm much more interested in the woman and her journey in the cases of what I write. And I notice that I struggle a lot more to be like, what is this man's like arc? Like, what is his like emotional internal struggle? Because I'm like, what does he have to be so upset about in life? Like, what is even? But you
It's
figure it out. But it is
true.
like something you have to really think about. Just as like parts of writing a book, you have to make sure that everybody's kind of like moving in a direction.
What is the equivalent for an unlikable heroine when it comes to male characters?
Oh, of course, there's not one, is there? In a straight romance?
I think that in romance, we want women to act a certain way morally, but men have to look a certain way physically. I feel like
That's a great point.
How we,
but women also have to look a certain way too, don't they? In a lot of
Yeah,
but
it's not
I feel like
exclusive to men.
yeah,
Right.
we're a little more graceful when women are writing women, but as a lot of women are writing men, I feel like there's kind of an across the board standard that for them to be desirable, they need to look
Tall.
a certain way.
Yeah, like
physically.
I feel like plus size characters, you know, everyone wants to read plus size characters now, but nobody's asking for a plus size male character.
Right.
That is why I
Right.
loved Olivia Dade's The
Yes.
Third book. Shipwrecked.
Shipwrecked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're both fat.
There's a
and
huge
fabulous.
market for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
the people want it.
There's Jackie Lau has one coming out, or with the Canadian?
The groomsmen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably butchering the name of the book. I think it's The Last Groomsman or the stand-up groomsman. There we go. The Last Groomsman. That sounds like the apocalyptic version that Tavi writes.
I want that book. Can we get that?
This is the last wedding
The
ever.
Last Groomsman.
It's the red wedding of
Oh my God.
So one of the things that I did want to talk about was to make some book recommendations as well. But I will say this is something that I literally noticed as I was gathering together a couple books that I wanted to recommend featuring unlikable heroines. And I also appreciate that people have started to like market their books with that label. I don't necessarily love the label in general, but I do like that it's almost like rebranding, like, oh, I've got, you know, this unlikable heroine, or like she's bossy, she's messy. I love it. However, this was something that I still don't know how I feel about it, because the two recommendations that I wanted to make, I realized there was a commonality across them. Not just that the female character is a quote unquote unlikable heroine, but that one of the ways that we tame down her unlikableness and show that she's loving and wonderful is there's a child involved. One of them is a surprise pregnancy, and one of them is a single father. And there is something nagging me that I don't like about that having to be the way to show that this woman who might be career driven, who might be a bit brash or loud, or, you know, not take shit from people, that the way we show that she's still human is by tapping into motherly instincts.
the only thing that women are good for.
Yeah, it's just I don't like that was
That's
something
why
that
I'm no good.
I recognized. That was just something that I recognized in these recommendations that I was like, ew, I don't know if I like that. Like that there's something about that I'm just now realizing that is rubbing me the wrong. And don't get me wrong, I love these two books. Like I will still recommend them, but I don't like that being she's harsh and career driven,
Right.
but she, you know what? She just didn't know that she was going to be a great mom. And
Yeah. I've never
I
thought
don't know
about
if
that
that's
before.
the message that I want.
As if that's mutually exclusive to be,
Right.
you know, you
Mhm.
can't be both of those things. The
See-
proximity to motherhood is definitely a redeeming trait for
There
a
it
lot
is.
of women.
Right.
Yeah.
I like I said, I know I'm an unlikable woman, and I didn't want kids, and then long story short, I didn't want kids, and I ended up having kids. And I feel like I have to, like, you know, you lose yourself in motherhood. I'm saying this as if you guys are moms, but I know you're not.
We've all
But,
been
like,
kids, so we understand.
like, and like it's almost like I have to remind myself of like I'm still unlikable, guys. Like I'm still
Well, and you're still
I still curse and say horrible things. Like
you're not, and not to minimize, you know, having children, you're not just a mother. I know that being a parent is very difficult, but you're also an individual. You're a person. You're a woman.
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. I'm just a mom. And like I lost like the whole previous to kids, like I lost the whole 33 years of my life before kids, like because now I'm just a mom. I'm like, no, wait a second. No. I had this really cool life where I did weird shit and like
yeah, I'm running through more books in my head where I really do feel like that has become, I like that term proximity to motherhood, Kat. I do feel like that has been used as a redeeming quality for unlikable women in a lot of the books that I'm thinking about. And again, that's not me saying that that story shouldn't exist, but that I don't want that to be the only option. Like you should be able to still exist and be the character and the person that you are without having to have kids or marry somebody who has kids or get married at all. Like, so I don't know. I don't love that that's like the fix it that people are applying to the situation.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a contrivance too. It's kind of like, could we think of nothing else to do with these women? Although I love stories with, you know, parents and all that kind of stuff. Like I don't mind like a pregnancy story, nothing like that. I'm like on gentle parenting TikTok. I'm not even a parent.
Me
I don't
too.
even have kids.
Same.
Yes. Raise your hand if you had childhood trauma. And so that's like I love that. But like even in my book Partner Track, not the Netflix series, sorry, not that famous. My heroine doesn't want kids. Her best friend does. And they even talk about we could raise a kid together. Like we could have like a family that's different, right? If we wanted to. And they stick to this, by the way, because they remain roommates throughout the whole book. But even then, when I wrote that character, she has a dog. And that is like proximity to motherhood to people. They're like, oh, well, she can't be that bad. She has a dog, which is honestly true to a lot of degrees, right? But it's kind of funny because what if she didn't? And I won't even get into it. I'd be curious to look at how many books redeem unlikable women or like women who are really into their careers with children. But also, I want to say that I don't think being into a career or being like a super high powered person is like, I feel like that's what we're always going to when we talk about unlikable women. But I feel like, why do unlikable women always have to be successful? Because like, can't I just be like a broad city loser? Like, can't I just be that way? Because I feel like that's like my brand of unlikability, right? Like I'm sleeping until 10 and smoking weed on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think they would both options would be considered unlikable by societal standards and the way that we've applied them to books.
Yeah, that is true.
I just finished a book last night. So let's just bring these 2 points together. So she was unlikable because she was super shallow, like obsessed with the Kardashians and spent money. She gets pregnant from a one-night stand and she continues throughout her pregnancy, like doesn't stop, like the shallowness, like she's obsessed with, you know, to fitting into her clothes, that she refuses to wear pregnancy clothes. And like, and the guy is just like, yeah, I love it. I love everything about it. And I think that's why, like, full circle, like we want to be unlikable and we want to find someone that loves us for being unlikable.
I like that. Let's talk some book recommendations who feature, you know, ones that feature the quote unquote unlikable heroine. And if you want to talk about why the heroine is deemed as unlikable in this book, feel free. I'll start with one of mine, which I really enjoyed. This is a historical romance, which I think just adds a whole other layer onto the unlikability factor, because God forbid being a woman existing in like Regency romance, but you know, make her a certain way and yeah, people hate it. So I really enjoyed this book. It is called How to Survive a Scandal by Samara Parrish. It's the first book in her Rebels with a Cause series. I just like that. And it's a Regency romance. It's one where they're kind of thrust into a marriage of convenience. And she is of noble birth. She's a duchess, and he is your everyday guy who has a daughter. I think it's a daughter. And she's, again, sort of thrust into motherhood in addition to marrying beneath her socioeconomic wise. She is unlike, and honestly, when I talked to Samara, she like pitched her as like she's a very unlikable woman because she's been raised a certain way and with certain expectations for what her life is supposed to look like. And when her life doesn't meet those expectations, she takes it out on the people around her because she's upset. So I really enjoyed it though, because I don't read a lot of books, especially historical romance, where we would think of them as unlikable heroines. I think when we do read books like that, it's usually because she wears pants or she's pursuing a career. And in this one, it really is that she's doing everything that society expected her to do, to get married, to have kids. But it doesn't necessarily meet up with her own personal expectations. And that's sort of where the disconnect is. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed that one. So that's one of the ones I wanted to recommend.
I think I've read that one.
Cool.
Should I go next? Are we going
Anybody.
in order? Okay, I'll go quickly on this one. So I'm actually going to recommend one that I haven't even read yet, but my friend recommended it to me and I just downloaded it and I feel like it seems kind of interesting. It's a fantasy romance and it's called Releasing the Gods by, oh my God. I can't read her, the Titans saga. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but the heroine is like an influencer and she's superficial and she's like just a little bit shallow. And according to my friend, and I'm only recommending this one because I feel like I always recommend the same books over and over again. And I want to branch out a little bit. It takes a long time to like her and it's like a slow build and you kind of learn about her childhood trauma and what has made her the way she is. And I appreciate that kind of introspection into a heroine. Like I want to know those things over like, I don't know, she gets a promotion and then becomes nice or whatever. Like I'm less interested in that story. So that, and then as always, I always recommend Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. That's one of the best unlikable heroines ever. Like I love that heroine. So funny, so quirky. She literally saves a cat, which is like a hallmark of writers everywhere, saving a cat. I love that one. And then I think that's all. Oh, and then I'm going to do a drop on mine. So I have a novel coming up called Airplane Games. Third in a series from my 2 novellas that I did over Christmas, holiday games, and hotel games, to which a beta reader said to me, I couldn't put this down. However, this book will be polarizing. And I know exactly why. Because my main character, she is definitely unlikable in many ways. Somebody asked me if she had bipolar disorder. And I was like, you know what?
Maybe.
Your guess is as good as mine. And that's it. Those are my recs.
I'll go. I have to say, I have to preface this with, I didn't realize my pick was Unlikable until I started to see reviews of it last year. And I was like, oh, I'm a little attacked because I related to her. And so does that mean I'm unlikable too? But my pick is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I realized after and I loved it, and I realized after reading it that most people did not like Nora. And like I went back and reread the like blurb because I'm notorious, I don't read the synopsis of anything. So this was my first time looking at it, and it says in it that like she's not like your typical heroine, and that like the only people she's like kind to essentially are her clients because she's a literary agent and her sister. But then like when you read it, she is the oldest daughter, and you know, as the oldest daughter, that's a very specific kind of trauma. So it was like she's mean, and I was like, is she mean or is she like hurting? Is she healing from things in her past? And so I didn't really think that Nora was unlikable, but then the internet seems to, and I'm like, just give her a chance, you know, finish. How about we read a little bit more than a couple chapters? So yeah, that is my pick.
So the book I was talking about before with the pregnancy with the shadow lady, it's The Devil You Know by Elizabeth O'Rourke, and I recommend the whole Devil series. I feel like all those women are unlikable in their own ways. The last one is hysterical though; it's so funny. She's like, I'm gonna be the worst mom. This is terrible, and the guy's like, yeah, you are, but I'm here. Don't worry about it. Which is how I feel. Like I relate to that. And then the other book that I thought of in recent memory, the one book that I wanted to throw my Kindle out the window every summer after.
Oh.
And I feel like she was likable, and then, no spoilers, then she does something and you're like, do I hate you? Or do I like have empathy for you? I don't know. And I'm
But do you keep reading?
yeah, I finished it and I was so angry. And then, you know, you have to think like, oh, well, you know, we all do stuff that's stupid, so I shouldn't hate you. And yet I still do. And yeah, so that's the one in recent memory that I wanted to throw my Kindle in the trash.
Great.
I have two as well. My first one is Shelley from Beard and Mind. That's Penny Reed's Winston Brothers series. And in the blurb, it literally says, Shelley Sullivan is not nice and never accommodating. And that's like her brand. She has OCD, so she's very particular about the way things have to be. She doesn't like touching people. She needs to be in control. And so all of those are kind of reasons that she's perceived as unlikable by a lot of people in the book. And then another one is Rose Calloway from the Calloway sisters from Kristen Becca Ritchie. She's also an oldest daughter. She's the oldest sister. So I feel like that, like Tavi said, has a lot to do with her character. Like, is she mean, or has she just had to protect her younger siblings her whole life? And they come first, you know? She's got anxiety. So another kind of neurodivergent heroine. She comes off as cold and like uninterested in love, but it's really sweet to read because her hero Connor, he's like, I don't care about that. Like, you love me. So it's really sweet to read their interactions and how he understands her and her intentions more than what she's saying.
I will say, and I know we didn't go into this, but just as I think, and I don't think this is specific just to women, but just as female characters are demonized for their sexuality in romance, I do think it's the same for neurodiverse characters as well. That's an added layer to why they're unlikable to some, which I do think is just awful. But it is wild to me that's even an option, like, for people to think.
And I'm going to spend the rest of my night thinking about how a lot of these characters, the only way that they're able to show their capacity for love is by giving them a pet or a child.
Motherhood.
No, I think if you're neurodivergent, are all your characters neurodivergent? Like, I wonder. I think all of mine are.
Yeah.
Like, in one way or another.
Yeah.
I think
and a lot
so.
of the conversation around what makes people unlikable is kind of ableist. Like, are these unlikable characteristics or are they autistic? Like, we have to.
Thank you. I can think of multiple books, like, off the top of my head, because I do read like one author who does write a lot of her heroines as being neurodivergent, as being different body sizes, as having different disabilities. Like, I can think of one who's a visually impaired character, one who uses
You're talking Chloe Leaf?
Huh? No,
Chloe Leaf?
No, but that's another one I do love. But I mean, it's just wild to me that but usually a recurring thing in her books, this is Lanny Linville, a recurring thing in those books is that the heroine is usually like, she's usually a virgin because she's never been able to find a man to put up with her antics, to deal with what's going on with her, which I just but the other one that I did want to recommend, I really love this series, and if like you're looking for like a family to like kind of fall in love with, Bella Matthews has this great, it's actually like kind of two different series that like weave into each other, but this one comes from her Restless Kings series, because they're a family, last name is King, and it's Broken King. It's the second book in the series, and the woman, I love her so much. She is like the boss bitch of the family. Like, it's mostly boys, and she is the one woman, and they have this empire of owning a football team and a hockey team, and she wants to run things. She wants to be in charge. She wants to do everything, and she really does. But the thing that makes her pull back from it a little bit is falling in love and getting pregnant. So, and of course she's that character who never wanted kids, who never dreamed of having children, but I do like the conversations about kind of worrying about like, well, because I never wanted kids, like what kind of parent will I be? However, I do think that this still ties into not just what kind of parent am I going to be, but society's question of, well, what type of mother will you be? Because I think that's the question that if you wanted to wrap up unlikable heroines in a bow, it always kind of goes back to this question of, well, because she's this way and because she does this and because she acts like this, what kind of mother will she be? And that, in a nutshell, is my large issue with the issues that people take with unlikable heroines and why we have them and define them as unlikable in the first place, is that they can exist individually. They don't need to exist in proximity to a man or in proximity to motherhood. So that's my rant of the day.
In this thesis, I will.
Exactly. In conclusion.
Also, if the men that you are with does not like women who are bitchy, then what kind of sad man are you with? That's what kind of man who doesn't have like, who can't handle the other, like any humanity at all? How like weak is he?
Start a dating podcast, Kat.
That's why high maintenance women are my favorite, because the fact that a man will like, okay, and I will meet your standards. That is the ultimate fantasy. That's the ultimate dream.
And you know what? It's funny because I always, when I think high maintenance, I always do think about, I'm like, think about all the like billionaire romance books we read. And like most of them, I mean, the vast majority, male billionaires, right? God forbid it be a woman. But my thing is, I'm like, look, if you're going to place women on this pedestal, if you're going to say, I'm rich, let me buy you a boat, take the fucking boat. Take the boat, take it all, ask for more.
Right?
I can't stand it.
I can't stand it either.
I couldn't.
Don't say no. I'm like, I have this integrity where I have to work for money is fake and capitalism is real. So let the man give you the money and fucking leave. Get out. That's the greatest romance of all right there.
Take the
a woman
boat
and her
go.
Money. Yeah. Go on a trip. You don't
when
need
you
him.
turn 40.
And you become invisible.
Yeah.
Take the boat, drive off into the sunset, literally.
But also I'm against billionaire romance.
I will say, if you do want to read a billionaire romance, there is a wonderful series that Ariana and I love that is the Blue Water Billionaires, and they are all women. And my favorite thing about it is not only are they women billionaires, but like they've each made their money in separate ways, and you get to find out how they've made their money, and you see them like doing their jobs and being incredible and being philanthropic. I'm just like, this is my problem with billionaire romances.
You're not going to sell me on a billionaire romance.
But they're
promise.
So good.
What was it called? I'm looking it up right now.
Just pretend that it's not billionaires.
Yeah.
I have to just pretend.
It's 4 authors, 4 different books, but like it's a shared world and like they're all friends, and they have a like compound where their swimming pool is like ovaries. And it's
so good.
The dream. Good. They're living the dream.
They really are. And
they
they're
talk
all
a lot about like the politics of being a billionaire and scandals
late
and
30s,
how things
early
can...
40s.
Guys, you're not selling me on this, but I get the appeal. I get the appeal. I get it.
They're all heavy hitters, these authors, too.
Yes, they are.
I'm sure it's
a great series.
Yeah, if you're going to read a billionaire series where you will not hate the billionaires, except if you're Cat, I do recommend.
Sorry, I can't let it go. I don't know why.
Series. No, it's fine.
Sticking point.
Eat the rich. I get it. Like, you know, but
I don't read cop romances either. It's just how I go.
No, totally fine. Totally fine. To wrap things up, what would be something you want to see? I don't know if I want to say you want to see change or be different. I guess, why do we need unlikable heroines in our books? And what do we hope for them for the future?
I'll just go back to what Suzanne said before, and just like being seen is so important. And you know, representation is a good conversation to have, but even beyond that, as writers and consumers of media and entertainment, like creating art that comes from a real place is what we need, where we're actually reflecting who we are as people who may not be men. And also, I want to say this point too. this always really annoys me when people say things like, in romance, oh, the men are so unrealistic. Like this is like tangential to the unlikable heroine. Like it's teaching women silly things. But I want to be like, every like classic literature book I've read by a man, or not every, but many. What kind of women are they writing? Who are these fictional characters? And what have they been teaching men about women? So, let us write from a real place, and we can shift our definitions of what's likable and desirable and what's not.
Relatedly, so there's this meme I found that I retweeted and reposted. It says, "Do you like enemies to lovers because it's hot, or do you like enemies to lovers because you think of yourself as unlovable and unworthy of love, and therefore the idea of someone seeing all the worst in you right away and still falling in love with you anyways?" Which is
I don't not see that.
Oh, okay.
Ouch!
It's real loud in here.
Yeah. That one hit me because I'm a enemies to lovers girly, and
me too.
And like I know that I am lovable and deserving of it, but the last 3 years have been on the rougher side for me, and so there's a little, even though I know that this is not true, there's a part of my brain that's like, 2 dead parents in 2 years, it's a lot of trauma. No one's gonna want to stick and go through that with you. And I saw that meme and I was like, oh my God, is that why in the last 3 months I've been eating enemies to lovers up? Like, oh my God.
But I think I would, like you said, what for the future, I would like to see unlikable heroines not only in enemies to lovers trope, but and I hate when people are like, I want reverse grumpy sunshine. Get the fuck out of here. Like, I'm going to be grumpy if I want to be grumpy. Like, reverse. And no, I'm not PMSing and I'm not on my period. I'm just a grumpy asshole today. Like, I would like to see unlikable heroines in all of the tropes and not just enemies to lovers or reverse grumpy sunshine.
That was how my book was marketed. I remember, like, first of all, reverse age gap was a term that people were using, and also reverse grumpy sunshine. Interesting.
It's centering men. It's centering like men at like, this is the typical, this is not the typical.
They're allowed to be old. They're allowed to be grumpy.
Yeah.
So therefore,
you know what I would like for them? This is the other the recommendation will tie in what I hope to see for unlikable characters. Do You Take This Man by Denise Williams.
I haven't read that yet.
She is unapologetically unlikable from start, and this is what my favorite thing, when the book ends, she's still like, I don't like people, I love you, and he's like, and I love you the way that you are. But like, that book I remember because I interviewed Denise Williams right after it came out. And she was like, it was important to her because the character is Black and is good at her job and strong and has her own money and has her own everything, that by the end of the book she's not now this sweet, docile, like, I'm suddenly running through the flowers. Like, yeah, maybe I'm gonna do that. You shouldn't have
to sacrifice like all of that for the sake of a relationship.
Yes. And I hope that more books, if you start writing an unlikable character, I hope they stick with that, like, to the end, and not try to make us fall. Because I ended up I like the main character, but like, so many people were like, she's too much. And I'm like, is she too much, or is she too much for you? And
so not enough.
if you're gonna start writing that, stick to your guns and make her be unlikable until the end, to the epilogue.
Personally, I want to see us continue to write unlikable heroines until the point where we don't label them as unlikable, simply for being confident, self-assured, goal-focused, loving themselves. I mean, in the case of Denise's book, having somebody who has set goals, accomplished the goals they set for themselves, is reaping the benefits of accomplishing those goals. Why on earth would you want to read about somebody foregoing that to cater to what a potential partner might want? Like, nobody is worth you giving up the things that make you you and the things that you want. It's not worth it. There is no relationship that is worth that.
At the beginning, Kelly, one of the articles you read mentioned women being insufferable monsters. And I want
Yeah.
to see us being allowed to be insufferable monsters sometimes. We should be allowed to be difficult or challenging or bitchy or cold or whatever we want to be. In books, we should see that on the page, and we should see people, regardless of who they are or what they identify as, loving and accepting us as that. And I think that's so important for so many women to see, that they don't have to just be one archetype of woman.
Yeah, and only to add on to that, I would say a word of advice from a group of women to women who read romance, to allow not only yourselves grace as you like read these characters and find connections between yourself and these characters, but to give these characters grace, because more often than not, when you are finding that you have a problem with characters for the very reason of being unlikable, however you're going to define it, it is because you do recognize something within yourself that you share with these characters, or something that you wish you shared with these characters. And so I think I just want to ask readers to like have a little more thought and introspection, and always advocate for media literacy, that we're really thinking about the things we're consuming and digesting why we feel the way we feel about certain things. And it's okay. It's okay to check yourself on whatever you're feeling when you're feeling it. Like, it happens to me daily where I'll be like, oh my God, there it is. There's the patriarchy. There's the misogyny. Like, there it is again. And it's, like Tavi said, it's a lot of unlearning of practices that we've been told to do our entire lives. And so I think some people are more willing to take those steps towards unlearning than other people are. So I implore you to embrace taking those steps, because I think it will make for a much more pleasurable reading experience.
And especially toward Black heroines and heroines of color, we've got to do better with the way that we perceive them. They're not inherently aggressive. They're not more standoffish or combative than any other character just because of who they are.
Literally.
No, ma'am. All right, well, that just about wraps it up for us. I'm sure we could continue to talk about this for hours on end. However, we will wrap it up. And if you are watching the stream or you're tuning into the podcast, just know that you can always revisit this on the Boobies and Newbies YouTube channel. This will also be published as an audio-only podcast episode in the upcoming week, so stay tuned for that. You can always listen wherever you get your podcasts normally, or on boobiesandnewbies.com. But for now, ladies, thank you so much for joining me to talk about this. And I think you're all unlikable and wonderful in your own ways.
I love being an insufferable monster.
I want that on a t-shirt, honestly.
Same, right?
Yeah. Insufferable Monster Club. Thanks so much for listening. Tune in every Friday for a brand new episode of Boobies and Newbies. And don't forget, you can always catch up on previous episodes on your favorite podcast app or on boobiesandnewbies.com. Happy reading!